Welcome to episode 201 of the Fully In It podcast. Today I'm feeling cozy and want to chat with you about all things homemaking this fall, what I'm shifting in my home, what I'm adding, and how I am savoring motherhood right now. If you need a light episode that makes you want to putter around your kitchen, light a candle, get a warm drink, and join me. Welcome to the Fully In It podcast with Kate Saffel, a show for powerful moms growing life-changing businesses while showing up intentionally for their families. I teach you how to create a family-first and profitable business in less time by leveraging simple strategy, mom life-friendly systems, and above all, the mindset of going fully in it. You ready? So just be forewarned that this is going to be a bit of a chatty episode, just a more personal one where I can share what I am thinking about in home, what I'm working on, just those little shifts that I'm making around my house as we shift into the winter season. I'm looking ahead at the holidays coming. We're going to be hosting people for Thanksgiving, and really how I want my home to feel, especially since we live in Florida and it is pretty hot here year round. It does get a little bit cooler in the winter. Like I can, bust out a sweater here and there. I'm always wearing a sweater inside the house because our air conditioning runs really cold, but actual outside temperatures, it stays pretty warm most of the year. We do look forward to those occasional days where we can put on like a real coat and maybe some boots, but they are few and far between. So that means if I want to feel cozy, if I want that feeling that the winter creates where you kind of slow down and, you create your spaces where you can be warm and reflective and life just moves at a slower pace, I have to be intentional about creating it, especially because I could just keep going year round. So if you live in a place like me where, you don't get those seasonal changes, like the leaves don't turn, you don't get snow. I mean, those are all things I grew up with. So if you're in a similar boat to me, you have to create it in your home and in the way that you interact with your home. And so here are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And really, before I get into that list of what I'm working on, this all started because I had the nicest break visiting my family in Indiana. The kids and I flew up there for over a week, and it was so nice. I really slowed down. I did pretty much no work while I was up there. Everything was, pre-recorded and scheduled, which just makes such a difference so that I could just focus on being with my family and the kids and taking each day really slow. So we were able to fit in a lot of the fall activities that are so quintessential, like going apple picking. We did that one day with my mom, and we found this farm that had all of these heirloom varieties. The farm itself had been around since the 1920s, and there were just some really cool apple names that I had never heard of. And there was nobody there because we went during the week. And so my kids just kind of ran free through the apple orchards, and they had such a good time picking apples. I think we picked maybe 30 pounds. It was a lot. It was good. I would have picked more if I had a way to get them back to my house in Florida, and then I could have processed, I would have made applesauce and apple pie filling, and gosh, what else do you make with apples? And then just crumbles and pies and things like that, fresh. But unfortunately, I wasn't going to carry a giant bag of apples with me on the plane. So I did throw a couple in my carry-on bag for Kirk because he stayed home. He's been really busy with work. And so I did bring some home for him so that he could, have some fresh apples. But anyway, we picked the apples, and then we went back to my mom's house, and I put on this really kind of atmospheric 1940s playlist. I will put it in the show notes. And we just got to peeling and chopping. And what we did was we made a fresh pie to have after dinner. And then I made a couple batches of apple pie filling, which is like super easy to make if you've never made it before. It was really fast. And once it cooled, I put it in freezer bags, and then I just laid it flat in my mom's freezer because we're going to be going back for Christmas. And then that way we can make apple pie when we come back and enjoy more of those apples. But my dad, he was relaxing and the music was playing and the house smelled like cinnamon and apples and clove and nutmeg and all of that. And he said, wow, it just feels like the holidays. It was just such a nice moment for all of us together to gather in the kitchen and work with our hands and not be, going all different directions like so often happens in the busyness of family life. So that was definitely a highlight. We also went to the lakefront. So my family lives near Lake Michigan, and if you've never been to Lake Michigan, it is one of the most beautiful lakes I have ever visited. The water on certain days, it looks almost like it belongs in a tropical location, like where we live here in Florida. And, it reminds me of that, except it's, it's a lot cooler up there. But we had a really nice sunny, hot day at the beginning of our visit. It was perfect. And the kids were able to get in the water and they climbed the sand dunes, and the baby played in the sand. I tried to keep her from eating it, but we just had a really nice time soaking up some sunshine and getting to be back by my favorite lake because I miss it. That was where when my oldest two girls were young, we had a little house up near the lake, couple miles from the lake. I don't know if you may not have known me in that season. I used to Instagram about it. Like if you scrolled super, super, super far back, like nearly a decade on my Instagram to on my Happier and Motherhood Instagram, words, you would find some of the photos of our little house. It was 675 square feet. It's a little 2-bedroom, and we were just in such a minimalist season, and we were starting to travel. We were making the jump into full-time travel. And so we wanted a house that, was low maintenance, and it was right in town. So we walked to the library, we walked to the farmer's market, we walked to dinner, we walked everywhere. The playground was right across the street. It was pretty perfect. And so anyway, that's kind of the town that we went back to. So it was just really nice to be there. And we went to some of our favorite places in town, like the library. We went to the ice cream parlor. We went to the coffee shop. And this was a coffee shop that I used to take the kids when they were really little. I mean, like, toddlers and preschoolers. And I remember sitting at a table there with the girls, and they were coloring pages at this coffee shop. And I was working on the children's book that I wrote, and it was snowing outside, and they had little hot chocolates, and it was just so cozy. We went back when I was in town last week, and the owner was so sweet. She's like, I remember you. I was like, yeah, except my kids are so much bigger now. It's just wild. But, between her and then the owner of the ice cream parlor also recognized me, and he was like, hey, how are the world travels going? I'm like, well, we're not traveling anymore. We've settled in Florida, but it's so rare to have a place where people know who you are. And I definitely miss that. I miss that small town. It's pretty perfect there. However, it's also not somewhere that, we're moving back to anytime soon. As much as I love it, it's just not the best place for us to be as a family right now because of the things that all my kids are involved in. They don't have that there, if that makes sense, right? So like schooling and the extracurriculars, the specific things that my kids are doing, they're not available up there without driving like really, really far to get to it. And so it's, it's best that we stay where we are. And we love our community here. We love our homeschooling community and our church community. We feel really blessed to have all the layers of, friends and support we have. So, all of those experiences that we had in Indiana last week with the leaves turning, and, I had a stack of library books that I was reading on my mom's couch and getting inspired again, that came home with me, right? In my mind, I brought all those ideas back with me and have a bit of a fresh perspective on my home and an appreciation for it of what I want this home to feel like, as we've been here a year now. And, we're not planning on leaving anytime soon. So these are some of the things that I am going to be working on this fall. And if you are someone who has a lot of ideas and then you maybe struggle to put them into action, something that I do that may be helpful to you is I put them on my calendar. So I actually plan out when I'm going to do these things, because if I don't, they will just live in my head. And I'll think really good thoughts about them, and then they won't actually happen. And so I put it on my paper planner, and then it's like it's like an appointment or a task like anything else, and then I will do the thing. So one of the things that I'm going to be working on is my pantry. I actually have a really nice big pantry. I really love it. It's got a lot of shelving in it. I organized it months ago, and then it's just not in it's not in the order I would like it to be. And so I want to do some organizing in there, kind of declutter a little bit, get out extra things that we don't really need. Because, if you have a big pantry, you kind of have the space to store stuff. And that's a good thing and also a bad thing, because you can hang on to things that maybe you shouldn't. So I'm planning on cleaning it up, giving it a nice clean and a nice organizing, and then filling it with more bulk items like rice and oats, nuts, baking flours and things like that. We eat gluten-free. I wish we didn't have to, but none of us really do great with gluten. Occasionally we do reasonably well with like long fermented sourdough. And so I may bring that back again. We took a break from it earlier this year. Maybe with us, rounding the bend into winter, it would feel good to have some bread in the house and kind of see how we all feel with it. So for the most part, I'm using gluten-free flours. And when I bake, I have found that doing a mix of a couple different flours helps make like a really nice gluten-free option, especially like for cakes and things like that, like a mix of a bit like almond flour, tapioca, and then coconut. So anyway, I'm going to be doing that and getting my pantry enjoyable to go into, and also just stocked so it's easy to make meals and I have what I need. I'm also planning to make sauerkraut. We really love having fermented foods. It's so good for your body. And sauerkraut is one of those things that's like actually really, really easy to make. It's affordable to make because it's just, it's cabbage and salt and water. It doesn't get any more basic than that. You can ferment and make sauerkraut out of different vegetables and things like that. You can get kind of funky with it, but the basic is just cabbage and salt. So I'm planning on getting that going again. My kids like to eat it with their eggs, and we sometimes will use it as a side with dinner or lunch. And then I also want to experiment with making kefir or kefir, however you say it, which is fermented dairy. My kids love to drink it, but I'm not a fan of buying the store stuff. And so we are really lucky to have several local dairies here, so we can get like hyper fresh milk, including goat dairy, because one of my kiddos doesn't do well with cow's dairy. And so there's a goat farm near us, and I'm planning on going and picking up some goat milk to turn into kefir for her. So those are kind of the things I want to make. And something else I have been making pretty regularly the last probably 6 weeks or so is homemade granola bars. And if you've not made these yet, they're really simple to put together. I will share some recipes in the show notes. I make a couple different versions. I make one that's just, oats and chocolate chips, like just your basic chocolate chip oatmeal bar. Tastes so much better than the store boxed ones, like so much better. It blows it out of the water. My kids love it. And then I make one with almond butter because I'm allergic to peanuts, but you could do peanut butter. And that one is really tasty too. These I keep in our fridge because they can get soft. I don't think they don't have like the preservatives or whatever that make them like hard, like the ones that you would get at the store. But we keep them in the fridge, and then the kids will have 1 bar a day. And I limit them because if I didn't, my kids would eat all of them. I make 2 big pans at a time too. And that way we can, like I said, we can each have, like 1 bar a day, and then it'll last a week. So I only have to make them once. Another thing that I am focusing on this fall, is something I had been wanting to do for a while, but I was pregnant and then I had, a little baby, so I just didn't have the extra, bandwidth to do it, is repainting rooms in our house. Do you like painting? Since I was a kid, I've loved painting rooms. I was always redecorating my bedroom. I'm sure my mom loved it. I would get all these quirky ideas, but it just really makes your house feel like a home when you put your own personal touch on it. And so these are the spaces I'm going to be working on. I just need to finalize my paint colors. One is the kids' bathroom. It gets so much wear and tear because it doubles as our guest bathroom. And it just really needs a fresh coat of paint. Like every time I go in there, I'm like, oh my gosh, it needs it so bad. And that'll probably be just a neutral color that I'll do in there. And then the living room, that's the other space I really want to paint. So my design style is pretty traditional. It's like a traditional with coastal touches. And this wasn't always my style. I think when I was younger, I was a bit more into like the modern look. I love like old pieces of furniture. And so, we have different family pieces in our house that I incorporate into my design. I'm getting a solid wood, gorgeous, I'm assuming handmade desk that was my grandmother's. My grandmother's 95, and I got to see her when we were in Indiana, but she moved to a space where she didn't have room for the desk anymore. And so my mom asked if I wanted it. And I was like, yes, I'm happy to get rid of the IKEA desk and put this gorgeous, gorgeous desk in my office. And so anyway, I will be getting that soon. And in the living room, I am hoping to paint it like an understated blue, something that almost feels like a neutral and grounds the space, because I use a lot of like blues and creams and white in my design. That's just what I've always gravitated to, are those colors. If you have any suggestions on a good blue to use that is like a mature blue and not like a baby boy bedroom blue, let me know, because blues are very tricky to pick out. We are hosting 16 people for Thanksgiving this year. And so I want the house to look fresh. And so that's kind of on my mind. And it's giving me a deadline, the end of November, essentially, to get these little house projects done so that it looks really good when we host people in our house. Another thing I am working on is doing some rearranging with how we have our house set up. The big one is for baby M. So this has to do with her sleeping arrangements. She co-sleeps with us. 4th kid, I am telling you, such a game changer just to have her in bed with me. I know everybody has different opinions on this, and I know some people get really worked up about it, but if you follow the Safe Sleep 7 and you are careful like I am, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I'm very aware of where she is at all times, and like the slightest thing wakes me up. And so it's worked well for us because I've also done the whole like putting the kid to sleep in their crib and trying to lay them down, and then they wake up, and then you have to do the routine again, and then you gotta try to lay them down again. And our life is just so full right now. I need good rest. And so I have felt so good in this postpartum period having her sleep with me. And we have her crib as a sidecar on our bed. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically her crib is kind of it's like pushed up against our bed. It's missing one side. And so it creates a safe space for her to roll into her crib, and it's flush with our mattress. So, she's able to just move from one space to the other pretty easily. And anyway, so that's kind of our setup, but I'm going to be adding something else to our bedroom for her. And that is a Montessori style floor bed that she can use for naps and then eventually for nighttime. I'm a huge fan of Montessori. I read all of the books on the Montessori method 15 years ago when I was pregnant with my oldest. And it was so transformational for the way that I parent and I do home life. Like, it's just always inspired me. And like the really cool moment I had was years ago. I actually had the honor of interviewing Simone Davies of the Montessori Baby, Montessori Toddler, Montessori Child books, that trio, on the Cohesive Home podcast. It was an incredible conversation. I was like totally pinching myself. I will put the link to that in the show notes if you want to listen to that episode because it was a really good one. But if you're not familiar with floor beds, it was Dr. Montessori's belief that allowing a child the ability to get up and down off their own bed was good for their independence. It doesn't create all those battles that you have with cribs of, them wanting to climb out of them and potentially hurting themselves. And I experienced that with my oldest because I initially had her in a crib and she would just cry and yell and she hated being in it. And then when she was about maybe 15 or 16 months old, we switched her to a floor bed. And she loved it. And she's just started immediately sleeping through the night. And it was so good for her. It got to a point where I would just get her a little stack of picture books when it was nap time. And I would set her on her floor bed. And she would just thumb through those picture books until she fell asleep. I mean, it was just awesome how that worked because she really took ownership in her own space and she loved it, right? And so if you have a floor bed, the key thing is that the room itself must be, baby proof. It has to be safe. You have to think through everything because if they can get up off their bed, right, they could get into mischief, I guess. I mean, I'm always like right there, listening for her and able to get in there pretty quickly. So yesterday I deep cleaned our bedroom. I did another round of baby proofing and really tried to think through, if there was anything that she could get into. And then my plan is this weekend to set up a mattress for her on the floor. We thankfully have an additional wool crib mattress that I can use. And yeah, I'm planning on getting a soft sheepskin that she can cuddle up with and use because it gets cold in our house with the air conditioning. Again, the air is not cold outside, it's just cold in our house. I'm planning on hanging some artwork on the wall at her eye level so she has something to look at and enjoy when she is laying and sitting in her bed. And then, of course, putting a couple of those picture books near it. So if she wakes up and she wants to just look at a book, that she can. But again, all of this is really just to, help her be her own independent little person and give her a little bit of autonomy. And then, of course, I love the benefit of being able to lay down on the floor next to her as she is going down for her nap and then just kind of crawl away and not have to do that that whole thing where you lean over the crib and the side of the crib cuts into your stomach and you're gingerly trying to lay them down. It's yeah, that one's tough. So all of these are what I'm planning on working on over the next month or so, putting it on my calendar, making it a priority. And then I'm just trying to keep the moments in between all of our busy activities more intentional and peaceful. I mean, here's the truth. I have 4 kids, ages 8 months to 14, and our life is busy. I don't like being busy, but it's just what it is. And I'm not going to argue with reality, right? I'm just accepting it and instead finding peace in the moments. And the way I have figured out how to do this is just by pausing and letting myself feel peaceful in my heart. I just take a deep breath and I look around my surroundings and I feel gratitude for my home and for my kids. And that just centers me. It just brings me back to why I do all that I do. And it helps me feel that slowness that I crave even when my life is just so busy. You know, baby M is 8 months old now, and it's bittersweet for me this first year. It is flying by. I don't even know how. I feel like I was just pregnant with her yesterday, and I know I cannot hang on to it, right? This is every mom's struggle. I'm trying to. I can't. So I'm just trying to be there for as much of it as I can. It's different now that I'm an older mom. When my 3 oldest kids were really little, you know, they're all 3 years apart. And so at one point they were, you know, one or baby 3 and 6. And I was just trying to survive. You know, I can't even imagine. I know there's some of you, you've had your kids even closer together, right? Like you're just trying to get through each day. But now I have the capacity to slow down and really enjoy having a baby again. And it's such a good feeling. So if you are in a season of motherhood where you're just trying to hang on, take heart. It does get easier. It's not always going to be that way. You will get to a point where you can handle more and your capacity will grow. So anyway, so that is it for me. That is all the things that I'm focusing on for homemaking this fall. I would love to hear from you. You know, send me an email, hello@happierinmotherhood.com, and let me know. How are things looking for you this fall? What from this episode inspired you that you want to take away? What will you work on yourself? Or if you have a paint color for me for that blue that I'm looking for sure, let me know. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I know it was a little bit different than the ones I typically do. This is just where my heart is at right now. And so I hope that you enjoyed it. And as always, if you enjoy my podcast, leaving a review is just the best thing you can do because it helps other people find my podcast and know that it is worth their time to listen to. It really takes about a minute to leave a review, and you can leave one on Apple or Spotify. Those are the 2 main ones that will give you that option. So if you can, I would really appreciate it. Okay, my friend, I will see you next week.